Hey guys, so in this video I wanted to talk about how I troubleshoot training plateaus and how to overcome them, because this is something that everybody is going to experience at one point or another in their training career past their novice linear progression, which is going to be the period of time when you just start training. You have a very, very high training sensitivity because you are not used to the training stimulus. Any sort of training stimulus with a low amount of volume is going to make you grow. The whole joke I like to use is you walk past a gym, you look at a weight, and then you just grow because you're just that sensitive to training. And everybody's going to have a different period of time in terms of how long that linear progression does last, and that's primarily just going to be dependent upon your genetics. Some people have a novice linear progression where they can go to 500 pounds on their deadlift. Other people it's going to stop at 400. Other people it's going to be less, and that just frankly just depends on your genetics. And so you're going to be able to basically add weight to the barbell every single week, be able to have a very fast rate of adaptation, have crazy rates of muscle growth and strength progress. But there's going to become a time when that stops. You have hit a plateau. And likewise, there are going to other be periods of time, past the novice linear progression stage. When you're a beginner or transitioning into an intermediate and transitioning into an advanced, or periods of time throughout each of those stages where you're just not going to be able to make as much progress. You're going to have to change something. And so what I like to do first off, whenever somebody does have a plateau, is first off, I ask about their fatigue management. Because lots of people just have too much accumulated fatigue. And this could basically be indicated by you have a very, very low desire to train. You're not taking deload weeks, which is periods of intentional volume and intensity reproduction. Volume being sets and reps, and then intensity being the weight on the barbell or how close you're going to failure in relative intensity sense. To help lower down fatigue, because as we progress throughout our training careers, in our training blocks, you're going to have fitness rise, which is going to be your ability to lift heavy weights, make progress in the gym, see all these desirable training adaptations, muscle strength, whatever. It's going to progress linearly. However, there's going to become a point where fatigue is also going to be a cost of that training stimulus. And so there's going to become a point where fatigue is going to cross over fitness, because while fitness goes kind of like this, whatever rate of adaptation you're going to be, depending on how sensitive you are to training, is going to be how fast you meet those progressions. There's going to become a point when fatigue is going to exponentially increase. It starts off low and then it's going to exponentially increase. It's going to cross over your fitness, and it's going to be masking your fitness. It's going to actually be at a rate that is going to actually be making you worse. And so if you're feeling beat up in the gym, low desire to train, like no pumps, you're not sleeping well, you have appetite disturbances, and you have looking at your training, it's been a while since you've deloaded or taking sort of fatigue reduction period, then you might want to take a period of deload week. You're basically lower down the volume to about 50 to 70% of what you're currently doing, and then intensity, by about lower that down by about 10 to 20%. That's going to be the biggest thing, because volume is the biggest driver of fatigue, with relative intensity also being up there, and then absolute intensity being third. So first off, do that. Make sure you're taking fatigue management. Make sure you're training. You're actually taking deloads and rest days and all that stuff. So if you're doing all that, the next question is going to mainly go to training volume. And most of the time, past your novice progression, and with lots of training plateaus, lots of times the answer is going to be actually to increase volume and not decrease it. Now, the rare times when you would want to decrease training volume is if you're doing an excessive amount of training volume to the point where you're always sore, even after deload periods, and then you go back into normal training, you're sore all the time. You are not able to make progress, recover, adapt on time, because there's just too much damage being present. You're just constantly battling this sense of fatigue, your joints hurt, etc. But that's kind of like a perpetual thing, not like towards the end of a long training block. I kind of have those symptoms, which is normal. That means you're training hard, and the key is that you're not really able to make adaptations. It might actually just be getting worse. And then you deload, you come out, you feel pretty good, you go back to those training volumes that you're doing before, the same thing. Like, nothing happens, you just get sore and tired. That's when I would lower training volume. However, for most people, this is not the case. Most of the time, you're going to need a larger training stimulus to occur further adaptation, further progress in the gym. This is because your training sensitivity, as time progresses, is going to be lowered because you're more used to certain training stimulus. This is one of the reasons why periodization, which is basically the strategic manipulation of programming variables, is super important for long-term advancement. It means that you're going to change certain exercises. You're going to have, basically periodization is just novelty. It changes over time in a progressive manner to elicit further training adaptations. So if you're not able to make progress in a certain area where you're lagging behind or whatever, most of the time the answer is to increase your training volume. So what I would recommend doing, say you're doing like 10 sets per week of chest, and you're really just not noticing any sort of gains. Maybe you want to bump that up to a very, very slight amount. Like, I like adding in about 2 sets per muscle group just to start out. I feel like that's a really good sign. And then don't add that much more. You have to think about that from a relative addition standpoint to your training volume. That's about 20% increase to your training volume. And that's a pretty big difference. That could be what actually allows for more training adaptation to take place. Because most of the time, if you are not making progress, it's because you're understimulated. You're not having enough stimulus for an adaptation to take place. There has to be a large enough stimulus in order for the adaptation to happen. This is the SRA, or general adaptation syndrome principle. It has to be enough stress in order for adaptation to take place. So I would recommend adding in a little bit more training volume. Like lowering that down, you might get a slight increase temporarily. That's called peaking. But for long-term progress, if you want to actually drive further adaptations, you probably need to increase training volume. So that's what I would likely want to do. And then third is I would look at my recovery adaptive strategy. So that's going to be sleep, stress management, and nutrition primarily. So for sleep, make sure you're getting between 7 to 10 hours per night. If you're under sleeping, you're not going to be growing, you're not going to be making adaptations. Sleep is super important, and we're growing the most muscle, we're burning the most amount of fat when we are sleeping. Like, if you're walking around in Walmart, your body's probably more concerned about moving around the body instead of recovering and burning fat and building muscle and all this stuff. Sleep is super important. I don't really need to go more into depth on that. Second, I'll make sure your nutrition is on point. Make sure you're eating appropriate calories for your goals, eating between 3 to 6 meals per day, eating enough fruits and vegetables. Like, micronutrition is super important because you're not getting enough micronutrients. You're not going to have enough. So micronutrients have vitamins, minerals, obviously, which aid in various chemical reactions, help with recovery, and help with you feeling better and with performance. Health is permissive of performance, so make sure you're getting enough fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean meats. 80-20 principle. 80% of your diet should be from whole, nutritious foods. 20% of it can be from more dirty, less nutritious. And then make sure you're eating enough protein and calories for your goal. Protein around 1 gram per pound of body weight. Protein is the building blocks of muscle tissue. When you're training, you're breaking down our muscle. We need enough protein, we need enough calories in order to build it back up, and we need to be spreading those meals out between 3 to 6 meals per day for the optimal response. And then I would look at stress management. So you have a super stressful job, you're not really relaxed at all, you're constantly working, you have lots of relationship issues, etc. Like, try to get those things in place, because sometimes it might not be your program. You might actually have the program is fine, like your volume is good, your recovery adaptive strategies just aren't in place. Sometimes you need to get that in order before you go to actually make progress. And so being honest with yourself about what your life circumstances are, and like, should you expect progress with this happening? Like, you know, you're moving, you're in the middle of like finals week, and like you're a medical student and like you're in residency, like you probably should alter your expectations a little bit around training, and then, you know, make adjustments to your training volume accordingly, because you still can make progress, but it's going to need to have changes done to it, or you need to just address that area of your life. But the main thing I want to get across in this video is that most of the time, when you are not making progress in the gym, you're not able to make more strength or muscle gains, the general principle is that you're probably not having enough training volume. And how we know we're having enough training volume, we're not doing too much training volume, is that we're able to consistently add weights and load over time, or to have muscle and strength gain in order, because training lights the match for our body composition changes and for strength gains to happen. You need to have that stress in place for that adaptation to happen, for its recovery. So to be honest with yourself about, you know, how your training is going, you know, if you're having a long period of time, you know, which you probably need about, you know, a good block or two of training to actually be like, okay, like I need more volume, especially if you're like feeling like you're recovering just fine, and you're not really like super sore, you know, you have the time to do it, probably add some more training volume. That'll probably fix a lot of your issues. So hope this video made sense. Wanted to just go over it. This is a question I get asked a lot, and I think it's a big misconception lots of people have. So hopefully this would help you guys a little bit. If you guys like the video, please make sure to like it. If you guys have any questions, just ask them in the comment section below. For coaching programs, go to adampeterfitness.com, set up an application, and you know, hopefully, you know, I can get you some programs for some coaching. But yeah, until then, keep showing up to train, do your job, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.